Okay, so this webinar is called Taming the Nightmare Document, Fixing Styles, Tables of Contents and Numbering. Now, what I wanted to look at this one is, to be honest, this is from kind of a trainer's perspective, this is something that's kind of asked from me all the time, is run a session on fixing documents. You know, you're working with documents, particularly documents that have passed between multiple people. And it arrives at your desk and you think, oh my goodness, there's so many things wrong with this and I don't even know where to start. I can see the numbering's wrong, I can see the formatting's wrong, I can see the table of contents is wrong, but I don't really know how to fix it. And a lot of the time people end up trying to manually fix things or just kind of paint over the cracks without really fixing it, because you know we're all working to deadlines, aren't we? So it's sometimes it looks easier to just kind of manually fix it and not really identify the problem, and then of course that causes further problems down the line. So that's what I wanted to run through today. So a few different learning objectives. So the first thing is just diagnosing the common issues in Word documents. So that might be something as simple as opening a document and just looking at it and thinking, I know there's something not quite right there. But there's other things that we can do to really look and to see kind of what's happening, where is the issue, and then obviously that's going to help us moving forwards in resolving it. Best practices for resolving document issues, and then specifically I want to look at numbering issues. So if you're working with a numbered document or a multi-level numbered document, which lots of you do, then being able to resolve those numbering issues, being able to resolve formatting issues. So that might be something as simple as like the font doesn't look quite right, or it might be something a little bit more complex, like the spacing between the paragraphs looks slightly too small and I need to make it bigger. We'll also look at table of contents and cross references. So again, it might be that you've already got a table of contents in your document. Maybe it was part of the template, or maybe someone else put it in there, or you put it in there and then sent it to someone else, and now it's come back and there's something wrong with it. And we'll look at cross-referencing as well, so inserting cross-references and making sure that those are correct and up to date, because again that's really important for a document where you've got lots and lots of references in there. And we'll also just talk about kind of standardizing the formatting and styles. We're going to talk a lot about styles today, and we'll kind of identify that actually a lot of these issues can be resolved by checking the styles that we're using and applying the correct styles. So we'll talk about that too. Why are shared documents so problematic? Documents edited, like I said, by multiple authors, a lot of the time with varying levels of ability. So it might be that actually maybe from the team of people that you work with, or from the group of people that are editing a document, maybe you're kind of the best person that's working on it, and you think, yeah, this is a great document, and you'd send it to someone else who maybe isn't as skilled, shall we say, or not as experienced in working with documents, and yeah, they play around with it, something happens and it comes back to you to fix it. And like I mentioned, tight deadlines. So tight deadlines lead to users looking for a quick fix, often causing more issues in the long run. So a really common example of this is later on, and that manual numbering it's just going to fall down. And also if you have users from different firms or different organizations, or even just different departments within the same organization, you might be using different styles, you might have different ways of managing the documents, everyone's doing different things, and then that's going to cause kind of a big mismatch, which can lead to problems. Common issues, so yeah, numbering issues, really common. Table of contents, you might have formatting on the table of contents that isn't quite right, or you might have text that's included that doesn't need to be included, or vice versa. So you've got text in your document that should be in the table of contents, it's a heading, but for some reason it's not showing up. Cross-references, so if they're incorrect, obviously people can't use them, it's not going to make any sense. And style inconsistencies as well. So if one paragraph is formatted slightly different to the next, it just looks unprofessional, it makes it harder to read. It's not good. So if I move across to my document, which I will just grab from here, I'm just working with just an example lease today. obviously what we go through is going to apply to any document, really. It doesn't matter what we're looking at, but we've just got a few pages on here. So yeah, we've got our cover page, we've got a table of contents, and then we've got some different kind of paragraphs and multi-level numbering after that. So the first thing I want to do is just look through the document and identify what sort of issues we have. So the first way we can identify issues is just by eye. Yeah, just by looking at it. Just by looking at the table of contents, I can see there's an issue there straight away. We should just have our kind of first level headings within the table of contents for this one, but we randomly have a 7.7. We can see other issues just by looking at the document as well. So this one here, for example, so the numbering's correct, it should be 3, but obviously there's something going wrong with the indents, and I think the font is different as well to what it should be. And again, down here we can see the numbering, so that should be 5.1, 5.2, but we've got A, B, C, D. So some of the things we can just pick out by eye, which is fine. Some other things are perhaps a little bit more complicated or might appear fine when you're looking at it to start with, and then when you start digging into the document a little bit further, you think actually that isn't fine, there's something a little bit odd going on there. Something that can help us identify kind of further issues is by clicking on the numbers within the document. So if I click on, let's just pick this one for example, if I click on 6.7, we can see the shading over the top of 6.7, right? And you can also see that the other numbers at the same level are shaded as well. Okay, 6.1, 6.2. Likewise, if I click on 5, we can see that's got this shading across it, and it also the other numbers at the same level are shaded as well. Now, just by doing that, we can see that some of the text, which in theory should be at that same level, is not shaded. Okay, so that termination there, and if I click on 6.4, I think I had a couple down here. There we go, 7.7. We can see that's not shaded. Okay, so the shading here represents our kind of automatic numbering. Okay, so if we've got a numbering style applied and it's been used correctly, then those numbers should be highlighted because it's part of Word's kind of automatic. Like if you move it down to the next line, it's automatically going to give you the next number. If we've got numbering in here that's at the same level of the text we've already selected, but it's not highlighted, like this 7.7, it means that something's not quite right. A lot of the time, it means that that number has been manually typed. So someone has manually typed in 7.7. So Word is not seeing that as a proper numbered item, and that's going to cause us issues later on. And in fact, it's already causing us issues here because the numbering is wrong. So we can see that there. That shading also applies to our cross-references. So if you are not sure whether a cross-reference has been inserted correctly or whether it's been manually typed, you can just click on it. So clicking on that cross-reference there, it's not shaded, which means that that one's been manually typed in. If I had used the correct cross-referencing tool, so I've gone to review, references, and done a cross-reference, which we'll go through later on, then that would be shaded. And if we hold Control and click on it, it would take us to that numbered item within our document. So there's a couple of other ways that we can identify issues within here. The other thing that we can do, and again, sometimes it might be obvious that the text is incorrect, but the other thing we can do is click on the paragraph or on the text itself, and we can look up here in something called the Styles Gallery. So this is just in the Home tab, and it's this area here underneath it says Styles, and in here a lot of the time we have kind of the most commonly used styles within the document, or the intended styles within the document. And obviously that's going to look a little bit different depending on your organization. Your styles aren't going to be exactly the same as mine, but we've got a few along the top here, and then I can also click on the arrow on the right side, and that's going to show me a few more. Okay, so clicking on text within your document, we can see it there, it's going to highlight the style within this styles gallery that is applied to that text. So a lot of the time when you're clicking through the document, so if I'm going through and kind of clicking on these kind of first level headings, I'm noticing that we've always got that level 1 heading style applied, is always selected. Okay, whereas if I click on this one, it's not. Okay, so another way of identifying any issues is when you're clicking on text, or you can do it by selecting the whole paragraph, the text or the style that you're looking at in here that you're expecting isn't selected. And if you're not sure which one it should be, then click on some text that looks correct and have a look at it in there. But obviously working with documents in your organization and your day-to-day work, you'll get to know the styles. Oh, I know, you know, first level heading should be level 1 heading, and I know the second level heading should be level 2, whatever it's called, and you'll get to know those anyway. If you're clicking on some text and perhaps you can't see, if I click on here, for example, you can't see a style selected along the top there, remember you can click that arrow, and if it's a common style within the document, sometimes it will then be highlighted underneath here. However, one of the drawbacks of the styles gallery is not all of the styles in a document are shown. So I'm clicking on this paragraph, I've opened up my styles gallery, I still can't see a style selected, so I would need to open something called the styles pane. And the styles pane can be opened just by clicking this kind of funny little diagonal arrow in the bottom right corner of the styles area. And this is our styles pane down here. Now, personally, I don't like that it pops it kind of in the middle of your document and it's really, really small and squashed. So you can click and drag this styles pane. So I can just kind of hover over kind of the heading here, and then I can just click and drag it across. And I can drag the edges to resize it, so we can make it a little bit bigger. I tend to just pop it over here on the right side, make it as big as I can, and it does stay there when you're working on your document. So if you start typing, it stays there. Yeah. So a lot of the time, I mean, it might be that you just pop it open and close it again, but if you're doing a lot of work in styles in your document and there's a lot of formatting that you're doing, it's really useful just leave it open, because it's a lot easier to have that there than to having to keep looking up here, clicking on the arrow, clicking out, clicking on the arrow again. So I always recommend having it open if you're doing a lot of formatting work. The other thing that I always recommend, and you might notice this if you've got yours open at the moment, yours may look slightly different to mine, aside from the fact that we have different styles, and that's because I've got this show preview box ticked. So what that does is it shows me what those styles will look like in my document. So for example, it shows me that if I use this level 1 heading style, it's going to be in uppercase, it's going to have, you know, a single number at the front, and it's going to be bold. Okay, I can see if I use a level 3 number, we're going to have a slight indent and then 3 numbers and so on. I can see what it's going to look like. If you have that preview turned off, you can't see that. You've just got the names of the styles, which might be absolutely fine. If you just want it like that, that's fine. But for most of the people I speak to, including myself, we like to have that preview turned on. It just makes it a little bit easier to find those styles in the list. The other thing that you can do is click on options, and you will get this pop up showing in here. Now, I'd recommend doing this if you're working on a document and it's been sent to lots and lots of different parties, and maybe those different parties have been using lots of different styles, so maybe their own firm or organization styles, and it's come back to you and you're kind of trying to get rid of their styles. You're trying to bring in your own house styles, and what you end up having in this styles pane is a huge list of styles. I've worked on documents before and it's hundreds and hundreds of styles, because there's styles in there from all different parties and things that have been working on a document, and most of those we don't even need. So you can change this to, for example, in use or in current document. So in use will mean that it's only going to show you the styles that you're actually using in the document. If there's any styles that maybe were in there before, but now you're not using them anymore, they're going to be hidden from that styles pane. You can always come back and change it if suddenly you realize you need to use it, but it just means that styles pane is going to be a little bit easier to work with, rather than having to look through kind of miles and miles of different styles in there. So a couple of different options to kind of get that set up, and then like I said, we can kind of leave that over there on the right hand side. It's got it's kind of a similar idea to the styles gallery. So if we're clicking on paragraphs or on text, then it will show us over here the style that's been applied to that particular text. So we can see again, so level 1 heading, perfect. When I click on this one that isn't quite right, we've got heading A, which isn't a style that I use. So that's the issue that we've got in there, and we'll go and resolve that in a minute. We can also apply styles from either the styles gallery or from the styles pane. So if we have got an incorrect style like we have here, where we've got this heading A, we can just scroll and find the correct style from within our styles pane. So level 1 heading, and click on it, and we can see that that is then going to update that text with that styles formatting. So our style is bringing things in like I said, whether it's bold, is it uppercase, is it indented, what numbering has it got? So all of those kind of characteristics are being applied when we apply that style. But you can also do that from the styles gallery as well. So if I just undo that, if you haven't got the pane open, you can do that from here too. I could just click level 1 heading, we're going to get the same result. Okay, so we can apply our styles from those areas. So some of the issues which are really glaringly obvious when you're in a document like this one, where we could see the formatting was completely wrong, the first thing we're going to be doing is going in, checking the style, and then if it's incorrect, applying the correct style. There are other ways of applying styles to text as well. So if I just undo that one, so let's just pretend we're looking at this one here and we can see, right, it says heading A style. I know that's not right, but I'm not 100% sure what style it should be. We could either click on the text that's correct and look at the style in there, or alternatively, we can use something called the format painter. So the format painter is this kind of funny looking paintbrush here, and everyone kind of tends to ignore it because you think it's kind of something to do with copy and paste, and if you've not used it before, it's not really obvious what it does. But what you can do is you can select the text that has the correct formatting, so in this case it has the correct style, and you can click on the format painter, and you can notice how my cursor's changed to a little paintbrush. We then click on the text that we want to apply that formatting to. So I click on that one there, and it's done exactly the same thing as we did from the styles area. It's copied the formatting, so in this case the style, across to that text. Okay, so that's just that one up there. Now, doing it that way, so selecting the text, single clicking on the format painter, and then single clicking on that text, it's just going to apply it once, and then I can move on with other editing in my document. If you've got lots of paragraphs that need to be amended to the same style, so let's say, for example, this security deposit was also our heading A style, and maybe user premises was also our heading A style as well. So we've got a few in there. Rather than kind of selecting the text, format painter, clicking it, selecting it again, format painter, clicking on it, instead we can double click on the format painter. So I'll select the text here, I'll double click on the format painter, and what that does is it leaves it turned on. So if I click on this text here, it's applied the formatting, but you'll notice my cursor is still a paintbrush and the format painter icon here is still turned on. So I can then continue through. So I'll click on security deposit, click on user premises, and as I'm moving through, I'm scrolling down, I'm just clicking, and it's going to continue to apply that formatting all the way through the document. Once I've finished, I can either click back on that or press the escape key, and then we've got back to it again. Okay, so that's another way of doing it. So either applying the styles from the styles pane or the styles gallery, or we can use the format painter. Another option, just to throw another option in the mix, I'm just undoing what I've done just there, just so I've got a few. There we go. Is to use the right click within the styles pane. So I can see this text is incorrect, okay, as is this one, as is this one. If I click on one of those that's incorrect, it selects that style in the styles pane, okay, this heading A. We can right click on that option, on that style, or you can click the drop down arrow on the right, either one. And there's this option here, select all. Now, if I click select all, it selects all of the text in the document with that style applied. So this kind of random heading A style that we really don't want, we've now selected all of the text that's got that heading A style applied. Okay, so 1, 2, and 3 all selected within 2 clicks. Okay, now that I have all of those selected together, it means that I can just apply the new style. So what did we want it to be? Level 1 heading. I can just click level 1 heading and it's done. Okay, so whether my document is 5 pages, 50 pages, 500 pages, if I've got multiple instances of the incorrect style in there, within a couple of clicks, I can select all of them and apply the new style. Okay, without having to kind of scroll through, use a format painter. So that method is brilliant if, like I said, you've got lots of instances, and particularly if they're very spread out and you think, oh, even using the format painter is going to take me a long time to do this. Okay, I'll show you that once more, because whenever I tend to demo that, people always say, can you do that again? So we've clicked on one of the incorrect paragraphs, one of the incorrect pieces of text. We'll find the selected style in the styles pane. We're either right clicking or clicking on the arrow, select all. It's selected all of them in our document, and then we can click on the correct style, and that could be up here or it could be in the styles pane. So level 1 heading, okay, and that's applied. Very occasionally you might notice that even when you apply the correct style, something's still not quite right. So sometimes you apply the correct style and you think, that's still, maybe the indent's still not right, or maybe the numbering's a little bit off. There is another option on that right click or the drop down arrow underneath the select all, and it's clear formatting. This is kind of a last resort. If you notice that there is a style in your document that's not a style that you want to use and it's causing lots and lots of issues within your document, the one option that you can do as a last resort is to clear the formatting from those. What it does is any text that's formatted with that style, it strips all of the formatting. It's going to take away the numbering, the indents, the fonts, everything. It's kind of just resetting it back to kind of 0. And then that means when you start applying your own styles, it should then apply and it gets rid of those issues. Okay, because I sometimes see that it's not very common, but if you've tried applying the new style, it doesn't look quite right, you can always try clearing that formatting. The other option is to, I think I've got some examples down here actually, this one. So this one here is, we can see it's incorrect because it looks incorrect, the numbering is wrong, and also, like I spoke about earlier, when I'm clicking on the number, it's not shaded. Okay, now again, first thing we're going to do here is look at the style that's applied. Okay, so clicking on this paragraph, I can see level 1 heading is applied, which is very strange. It shouldn't be a level 1 heading. It should be the same as these paragraphs here. So if I click on 6.9.1, for example, it's a style called level 3 number. So this should be level 3 number. So I'll do exactly the same as I did a minute ago. I can click on it and I can click level 3 number, or I could use the format painter, and then that's applying the style. Now it doesn't look quite right, does it? So the first thing we've got is we've still got 7.7 there. That's because that was manually typed in. Okay, so because that's manually typed, Word doesn't see it as a number, so it hasn't kind of automatically removed it or replaced it or anything like that. So we can just go in and delete it. Okay, we'll just go into backspace. I wish there was like an easy trick we could just do to get rid of it, but the best thing to do is just go in and delete it. We have also got the issue here with the numbering is still bold. Again, that's probably just an easy fix. We could just turn it off there. But again, if you were still having issues, we could go in and either try applying that style again. Sometimes just clicking on it a second time kind of fixes it. Or we could try removing that formatting and then again applying the style and kind of taking it back to 0 and then applying our style on top of that can get rid of any kind of underlying issues. Very occasionally, you'll still have problems. Very rarely, I'd say maybe 1% of the time. Once you've followed all of those steps, so you've checked the text, you've applied the correct style, you've reapplied it if there's still any issues. Sometimes there's still going to be problems, and if there is, we can go in and actually have a look at those styles within our document. So particularly if maybe you're continually using a style and you know it's the correct style, so let's say level 1 heading, maybe I'm always using level 1 heading in this document, every single time I'm using it, it's not right. So maybe there's an issue with the, I don't know, the font size, or there's an issue with the paragraph spacing, but it's happening every single time. Okay, and in that case, it's worth going in and actually having a look at that style and see what's going on with it. So to look at a style, we can either right click on it from the styles pane or from the styles gallery, and we can click modify. And when we right click on a style and we click modify, it takes us into kind of the settings for the style. So we can see things like the name of the style. We can see what the style is for the following paragraph. So that means if I typed something that was a level 1 heading and I pressed enter, that next paragraph is going to be a level 2 number. And we've also got the basic settings of the style, so the font, the size, whether it's bold, and so on. So some of the issues you may be able to resolve from there. It might be, oh, actually the bold for some reason has been turned off, so I'll turn it back on. Okay. Anything else to do with the style, so kind of advanced formatting, a paragraph formatting, is going to come under this format option. Okay, so these are kind of the setting that you'd normally have up here. So additional font options, so we've got things like that. So we've got like the all caps, for example, which is making it always appear in capital letters, and you've also got the paragraph formatting. So here you've got things like your indents, so your indent from the left side, your indents from the right side, whether you have a hanging indent for your kind of second line, your paragraph spacing, so the spacing before the paragraph, the spacing after the paragraph, and also the line spacing as well. Okay, now like I said, this is kind of like a last resort, and should only be done if the style is incorrect throughout your document and you open this up and you think, yeah, that's definitely incorrect. I know it should be 6 point after, for example, but maybe someone's gone in and changed it to 12. Okay, because when you change in here, unlike what we were doing a minute ago where we were just applying a style to a single paragraph and it was just updating that paragraph, this is changing your style within the document. Okay, so if I'm changing it in here, it's changing all of that text that has that style applied. Okay, and any future text as well that has that style applied. So it should only be used if you really need to change it. So I'm going to change it back because I don't like how that looks when it's really squashed. So I'm just going to right click modify, format, paragraph, change that back to 12 point, and click OK. There we go. So we've got that back in there. The other thing that you can look at kind of behind the scenes is the numbering. So you might have noticed when I went into that style there, I looked at things like the font and the paragraph and so on. I didn't look at how the numbering was formatted. Okay, so a lot of the time in the styles that we're using, if we're using multi-level styles, the numbering is going to appear differently. Okay, so 6.1, or you might have A, B, C, D, do we have a dot in between them? Do we have a bracket on the left and the right, or just a bracket on the right side? How is that looking? So that's all going to be pulled through from the multi-level numbering style, which is attached to these styles up here and on the right side. So we can access those settings. Again, it should be a last resort. If you've got problems with your numbering, check the style first, apply the correct style. And yeah, if you're still having issues, like I said, particularly throughout the document, so hey, whenever I'm using a level 2 number, for some reason the dot's missing, or the second number is always wrong, okay, in that case we'll go in and we'll have a look at that multi-level numbering style. So we can access that from here. This is our multi-level list button. It's a little bit misleading because when you click on a numbered item, this one is selected, which is just your basic numbering, 1, 2, 3, 4. But we actually want to go into this one here, this multi-level numbering. And when you click on that one, we've seen all of the different lift styles within here. And if there is one selected, so sometimes when you click on them and you go into here, I'm trying to find an example, probably going to do it now. If there's one selected, you can just right click and modify, or alternatively, you can go down to define a new list. I think the one in here is this one. I'm just going to double check with one at the top because I've played with the numbering so much in here. No, that's fine. So we're going to define new multi-level list. And we can see our numbering settings in here. So this is how the numbering is setting out within the document. So this is our kind of preview screen here. So this is our first level. It starts with number 1. It's our level 1 heading. And then the second kind of level is going to be 1.1 or 2.4 or 5.8 or whatever it is. It's going to be a number dot another number. And where it says level 2 number, level 3 number, that is the style that is associated to that level. Okay, so if we're applying our level 1 heading, it's going to be using this first level numbering. If we're applying our level 2 number style, it's going to be using our second one, and so on. Okay, so the first thing to check is, are those styles in there correctly? Because occasionally if you're having issues, it might be actually that level 2 number is missing, or it's a completely different style that we're not using. And if you do need to change the styles that are associated with those numbers, we have to click more, and they're shown over here on the right hand side. Okay, so I'm clicking on the different levels on the left hand side, and you can see the styles changing in the drop down. Okay, link level 2 style. So if that wasn't correct, I can use that drop down and I can select the correct style from the right hand side. Other things we've got underneath, we've got the number formatting. So again, you'll notice that it's changing as I'm clicking through the levels. This is telling us how it's looking. So things like, are we using dots in between numbers? Are we using brackets? How many numbers are in there? But it's also the formatting of those numbers as well. So is it 1, 2, 3? Is it ABC? So I don't want to get too technical and too in depth in the webinar, but underneath is what's controlling that. So this is the number style that we're using for the current level. And if we're using any numbers from previous levels, so if we've got 1.1, for example, then we're using that first number is from the previous level, we can choose how that's going to be inserted as well. Okay, so I won't go too much into that, but we can change that within there, and simply typing into this box as well will change it. So I can put a bracket in there, or I can delete a dot. Okay, so you can go in and change the formatting of that. You can change the font if the font of the numbering isn't quite right, and underneath we've got the alignment. So if you notice, the alignment of all your level 2s are off, or the text isn't starting at the right place, or it's not quite lined up, again you can come into here and correct these. And when you change these, you can see the preview changing up here. Okay, so you can go in and edit those. Okay, so it is a last resort. It's useful to know that is an option, but like I said, 9 out of 10 times we're not going to be doing that, because we should be able to resolve the issues simply by coming in and applying the correct style. I think a lot of people think, oh, the numbering's not right, so straight away I'm going to go in and look at the numbering up here or in here, and that's how I'll fix it. But yeah, 9 out of 10 times, if the numbering isn't right, it's because the wrong style is applied, or someone's manually typed the number. And as soon as you apply the correct style, Word automatically kind of marries it up with the previous instances of that style, and the numbering is automatically corrected. Okay, and then we just manually delete that typed number if it's not quite right. I'm just checking my list to make sure I've said the things that I wanted to say so far. Yeah, perfect. Okay, so the other thing I wanted to talk about was cross references. So I think we had one in here that again has been manually typed. This one, so clause 4.1. So hopefully, well, maybe you haven't, but if you've used cross references before, you understand the importance of them and why they're useful. If we're manually typing in our cross references, if the document changes, so if 4.1 becomes 4.2, we're going to have to remember to come back to our cross-reference and manually type it in. Okay, which obviously we might forget, we might get it wrong. It's a bit of a waste of time, to be honest. Like that's going to take a long time to do in a very large document with lots of references. So manually typing them is not something we want to see. So to use the cross-referencing tool, we'll go to References and we'll click Cross-Reference. And in here, it's going to show us all of our numbered items throughout our document, so all of our paragraphs in here. I haven't gone through and fixed all of the numbering issues, so please excuse the fact that some of these look a little bit random, but we can go in and pick one that's correct. So let's go for 4.2. If you load this cross-referencing box and you notice that this box is empty, there's nothing there, or there's a few things in there and they don't look quite right, just make sure that this reference type drop-down is set to numbered item. And also make sure that this second drop-down is set to paragraph number. So that means that when we're inserting a cross-reference, it's going to insert the paragraph number of that text rather than the page number, which obviously we don't want. So we're selecting our 4.2, we'll click Insert, and it pops that in there, and I'll just close the box. And as I mentioned earlier, because we've inserted that cross-reference correctly rather than typing it out, when I click on that, we've got that shading. And also if I hold Control and click, it takes me to that paragraph as well, which is quite handy if you're either editing it or if you're kind of just reading through the document rather than having to kind of scroll. So we've got that in there. Now, what happens if our document changes? So if I come up to let's say we inserted a new 4.2, and obviously our 4.2 has become 4.3. It's slightly frustrating that cross-references don't automatically update, like say if you're using footnotes, for example, which do. However, updating them is pretty straightforward. So what we would do is you can either right-click on the cross-reference and we've got the option to update field. If you're used to working with tables of contents, that will look familiar to you, because that's one way that you can update a table of contents is right-click, update field. That's fine, and it will work. Just undo that. But obviously, again, if you've got a long document and you've got 25, 50 cross-references, it's going to take a long time going through. Right-clicking on each one, update field. So instead, quicker way of doing it, Control and A, which you probably all used before, Control and A to select all of the text within your document, and then F9. So F9 on your keyboard will update all of the fields within your document. So that will be all of your cross-references. It will also be your table of contents as well, if you have one, which is why I'm seeing this pop up here. You might have seen this before. When you update table of contents, it's asking you if you just want to update the page numbers or if you want to update the entire table. I'll update the entire table because I know I've gone through and changed a few things. So I'll click OK, and the cross-reference is updated. Okay, so I would probably do that maybe don't know, definitely before I send a document to someone or share it or print it out. I might kind of doing it occasionally when I'm saving the document as well, Control A F9, and then I just know that everything's up to date, and you get your table of contents done at the same time, which is a nice bonus. So cross-reference, it's overly once you've used them a few times, they're fairly straightforward. The final thing that we have, I knew that was going to happen when I updated my table of contents. I think I accidentally fixed the issue I had with my with the text I had before. Let me just go in, and you kind of have to ignore me doing this. I'm going to try and mess it up again. Let's do right. This is going to look a little bit strange, but just for the purpose of the training, let's just update this table of contents again. And hopefully, there we go. Perfect. So table of contents, a really common thing I see is either text being included in the table of contents that shouldn't be, or the opposite. So people have headings in their document, or they think they've got headings within their document, and they're not showing in the table of contents. A lot of the time, if we're using templates, maybe that table of contents is already in there. It's already been set up for us. We shouldn't really be having issues. So again, it's always going to come back down to this. The first thing we should be doing is checking the styles of the text. Okay, so first thing we should be doing, rather than going, oh, there's a problem with the table of contents, let me come up and start kind of going in here and trying to change all the options. The first thing we should be doing is checking the style of this text. What is this text doing? What is it doing in our document in terms of its style and its formatting? So again, quick way to get there, hold Control, click on the text. It's going to take me here. This one is very obvious that something's going wrong. I had formatted it slightly better before I went in and messed around with it, and it looked a little bit more like it fitted in with the rest of the document, but never mind. Sometimes they look completely normal. You know, you could go to that text within the document and you think, it looks fine. What's the issue with it? But again, the first thing you should be doing is checking the style that's applied. Okay, so I'm clicking anywhere on this text or selecting the text, and I'm looking either in my styles pane or in my styles gallery, and I see this. Now, this shouldn't be a level 1 heading. It's 5.1 or whatever it should be. It should be maybe a level 3 number, like the text above it. Okay, so the way that table of contents works is Word automatically brings in text with a particular style applied. So a lot of the time, any text which has either heading 1 applied or whatever you're using as kind of that first level heading style, it's automatically being inserted into your table of contents. So if you've got text within your document, even if it doesn't look like a heading 1, if you're clicking on it and it's saying actually it is formatted as a level 1 heading, that's why it's being brought into your table of contents. Okay, so like before, the first thing we need to do is just correct that style. So I'm going to make it a level 3 number. There we go. Again, the number was manually typed, so I'm just going to get rid of that. And if I go back up to my table of contents and update it, then we can see it's removed. Okay, if you've got the opposite, so maybe you've got some text in here and let's just, again, this is not going to look quite right, but let's say this is meant to be a first level heading. Okay, and I'm thinking, why isn't it included in my table of contents? Again, the first thing you should be doing is clicking on it and making sure that it does have a first level heading applied. Okay, and when you've applied that, Word is automatically going to bring that into your table of contents. If you're still having issues, again, 9 out of 10 times that is going to fix it. But yes, absolutely, if it's still not working, we can go into our table of contents options and have a look. It might be that someone's gone in and changed something. So we can come into here and go to custom table of contents, and we can play around with the settings in here. Okay. a lot of time this here is just kind of the basics. So, you know, what character have you got between the heading and the number? So if that's changed, we can just go in and change it. But a lot of the time, if you're having more complicated issues, it's going to be under either options or modify. The options is those styles that are being imported. So we can see here, these are all of the styles we have in the document. And on the right side, we have this TOC level box. And if I just scroll down a bit further, there we go. We can see our level 1 heading. It's being brought in at level 1. Okay, so that means anything with a level 1 heading applied is going to display in our table of contents as our table of contents level 1. Lots of different levels in Word. So that's going to affect things like our formatting and things like that. So that's why level 1 headings are being included. Because I've kind of opened up my table of content settings, occasionally it can kind of end up resetting things, which is why it's telling me that my level 2 heading is going to be included and my level 3 heading is going to be included. We can remove those by just changing this to 1. So what this means here is that only first levels are going to be included. Okay, so our level 1 heading is going to be included. Anything after that won't be. So if we have an issue when we open this, so maybe level 1 heading doesn't have a number next to it, or maybe it has a different number next to it, so it has a 2 next to it or something like that, then that can cause issues. So make sure that that first level heading that you have, whatever it's called, has a number 1 next to it. The other button is modify, and modify is our formatting. So here are our table of contents levels. So TOC1, TOC2, we've only got 1 level in our table of contents, so we only need to worry about the first one. And it's showing us a preview of what that's going to look like. If we wanted to change that, so maybe we said actually they should all be bold, but they're not, or they should be all in capital letters and they're not, we can click on modify, and again we can go in and change the kind of the basic font options in here. If it's something a little bit more complicated, we can go into format, and we've got the other options here. So more advanced font options like forcing all caps, paragraph options if you don't like the spacing between them. We can go in there and change all of those. Okay, it's really important to amend your table of contents formatting in here if it's not right. So to give you an example, many years ago with the old job I had to create user guides, and for some reason the company said that the font of the table of contents should be blue. Okay, so I would just go in and I would select the table of contents and I would make the font blue. Now, if you do it like that, you do it manually, the next time you update your table of contents, it's going to change it back. Okay, so every time I updated my table of contents, I had to go in and make it blue again. So the importance of doing it through those table of contents settings, through that modify button and making it blue within the font there, means that if I'm updating it, it's going to keep those formatting options applied rather than resetting it every time. Okay, so do it that way rather than just selecting it and doing that. All right. Okay, I think that's everything. I'll switch back to my presentation because I just had kind of a final note, I think. There we go. I just really wanted to reiterate everything. So I've got kind of common issues down here. So numbers in a numbered list, don't type them manually. Okay, it might look okay for the time being, but down the line it's going to cause issues. So first thing we should be doing is checking the correct style is applied. If the numbering is not correct, we're clicking on that text, we're checking the style. If it's not correct, you can use the format painter, you can apply the style manually. When I mean manually, I mean like clicking on the style to change that and update it. If you're still having issues, yes, you can go in and have a look at your multi-level list style and see if there's anything that's not quite right in there. Text formatting issues, we're not manually correcting them. You know, we saw some text in there that was the wrong font, for example. Again, first thing, check the correct styles applied and apply it. If it's still not quite right, and particularly if that's happening again and again throughout your document, we can right-click on that style, modify, check the font settings in there are correct. Paragraph formatting issues, yeah, spacing between paragraphs, for example, or not enough spacing. And what I see sometimes is people just pressing enter so that they've got a bit more of a gap in there. And what that's going to do is just going to give you loads of extra lines, which we don't want. So again, check the style. If that doesn't resolve it, we can go to the style options and have a look in those paragraph settings. Cross references, we shouldn't be manually typing those in. It's going to make it harder for you, and it's going to make it harder for the people that are reading the document as well. So correctly using Word's cross-referencing tool, definitely, and making sure they're up to date. Table of contents, we should not be manually typing those out or manually selecting things and, you know, changing the color or making them bold. First thing again, check the styles in the document. Is that the reason why the text is being included or excluded from the table of contents? And again, yeah, if that doesn't do the job, then go into those table of contents options, have a look at the numbers to the right side of those styles, or if it's a formatting issue, going into that modify option and changing the formatting in there. Okay.